So we've talked about why the traditional American lawn isn't really a sustainable option. One popular alternative is a wildflower lawn. So that's planting local native species of wildflowers in place of grass. It's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
use less water, attract pollinators, be easier to maintain, and be prettier than that lush green lawn of the American dream. But do these claims hold up? And will your HOA let you get away with it?
Dun dun dun.
Welcome to Greening Up My Act. So, Tiffany, that was a very scripted intro I did right there, but I think it kind of sets up this week's episode pretty well. Like last week we did clover lawns, which you had
Mm-hmm.
some twists and turns in there that I wasn't expecting. But I wanted to start with, you've planted wildflowers in your lawn, not to replace your lawn, but like what was your inspiration there?
It wasn't in my lawn actually. It was in my flower beds.
Okay. Okay.
But what the hell was my inspiration? Part of it is there's this nature reserve near me, and they have just acres and acres of wildflowers that when I moved here 3 years ago didn't exist,
Yeah.
and it's been really cool. And they have like pamphlets, so I started looking at those, and then just one thing led to another.
Yeah, I think that that's a pretty common. If you've ever been to a nature reserve in America and like wandered through the wildflowers, you're just like, this is fucking pretty. It's
Mm-hmm.
just nice and there's birds and it's pretty and it's calm and it's lush and it's cool. And I
Yep.
think that's that's kind of how the wildflower lawn movement feels. It's just kind of like, because if you look it up on Instagram, it's not like influencers peddling something. It's like
Hmm.
pictures of lawns that are of wildflowers. It's like, here's some pretty flowers I grew, or trial and error. It's not really, I mean, there's still that kind of anti lawn movement underneath it, but it seems to be
Mm-hmm.
like a chiller. And again, I didn't go on Reddit to research this. So it seems to be like a chiller movement
Oh, I
than,
love it.
yeah. And maybe that was just, I limited my research. Um, but this was an enjoyable walk through a meadow for me. So
I love that.
I
I'm
I
so
hope that
happy
it
because
is
I've
for
been
you
just
too.
like, yeah, I've just been bashed around by no
Yeah,
lawn anti lawn
everybody's
people over a
mad.
couple
Yeah.
weeks.
Well, so starting with that, how about you introduce who the hell are we?
Yes. All right. So we are two date. We have jobs. We have day
We have
jobs, and
jobs,
they are
day
in
and night
marketing.
and afternoon and morning jobs. Yes,
You work at night.
I work all the
You're
time.
a freelancer. That's
I
why.
uh, I'm a contractor. I work
Oh God, I
all
know
the time.
those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. A We'll say full time jobs. Okay.
Yes.
So we work in marketing. We also are con trying to be more conscious and aware of the things that we buy and the things that we consume to see like, is this, is this green claim or, eco-friendly claim actually what it claims to be, as good as it claims to be, or is it like we say green hooey,
Hmm.
which is greenwashing? Um, because there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah.
And we have learned that we're kind of on our own. We can talk about the FTC later, but like no one's really regulating this stuff that much. So
Yeah.
it's kind of up to us, which is scary, but we are trying to help ourselves and you figure out how to spot this stuff on your own out in the wild. And yeah, we,
Yeah.
we try to use our marketing experience and be like,
Yeah. That's a bunch of words. Yeah. We
it's a
and
bunch of words.
yeah. Well, I mean that's what as marketing people we're like words. But
Yeah.
the goal is to help us and you live a more sustainable, eco-friendly, green lifestyle with personal changes you can make at home that are feasible, affordable, practical, and actually do what they claim they're going to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we are not scientists, which we have to point out. We have we do try to do some research
I don't think
and
we
make
have
it.
to point that out. Just because
Oh no,
one dum dum was like, "Oh, you're
well,
not scientists," it's like, okay, leave us alone.
yeah, but I mean that's another thing though is that like as marketing professionals who are trying to be honest, you know,
Well,
and
true.
like calling your podcast "Greening Up My Act," which by the way, that's who we are, Greening Up My Act. Kind of sounds like we might be trying to put some science claims behind it, and we're not. We're trying to help you and us make better decisions as much as possible. Because who has time to get a PhD in biology and or chemistry and figure all this stuff
Or
out?
Clover
Or Clover, right? I mean,
from
people
last week.
apparently have time to post on Reddit endlessly about Clover. So,
Yeah, they do.
yeah,
All the
there's a lot of
opinions.
opinions out there, and marketing is all opinions. So we want
Mm.
to help you spot what's a fact and what's not, and that's our goal.
Yep.
So
Opinions and feelings.
and
Marketers
feel
love
so many
to,
feelings to
yeah,
make you
marketers love
buy
to use
things.
your feelings to make you want to feel stuff
Yeah,
with their product.
about Clover.
Clover. Exactly.
But today we're talking about wildflowers again. We're back to wildflowers. No
Yes.
Reddit was involved in the making of this podcast.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
God.
on that note, I'm going to list my sources. And again, I limited myself to 5, like a good Guma. Guma is our acronym. I
Good.
said that to my sister the other day. I was like, "Oh, we're gonna have to push this season of Guma back." She's like, "What's Guma?" And I'm like, "You've been listening to us for 4 seasons now, and you didn't know it's greening up my act." She's like, "Oh."
We've
Anyway,
never said it though. We
we
say
never
it to
said it.
ourselves,
We
but we've
do.
never said it.
It's
So I'm
shorthand for
not
us. Yeah,
surprised.
it's not like we have a following that we're gonna call Gumas or something, which
Yeah.
sounds very.
I do like
Don't.
it though.
It's. I mean, be careful out there. You don't know what Guma means. But anyway,
True.
gummies. Our gummies. You're our gummies. Tiffany and I'm Kat. She's Tiffany. We are gummies.
Yes.
Granola gummies. Okay, anyway,
I
so my
love it.
sources tonight. Um, American Meadows had plant a wildflower lawn and transform your yard to a pollinator paradise. Then the National Wildlife Federation had, and I love the title of this, and I think you will too, Greening Your Homeowners Association.
Love.
Science Alert, which is another website, had replacing your lawn with wildflowers has loads of benefits. I found a guy called the Family Handyman, and they had an article on 7 things to consider before planting a wildflower meadow. And then Holland Wildflower Farm, and I didn't figure out where they were, but they sell seeds,
Okay.
and they had a, comparing the cost of wildflower seed to lawn grass seed, which is something
Okay.
you and I talked about during clover stuff too. Is like, is it more expensive? So, um, yeah, those are my 5 really cute, nice, warm sources. I will say, I think when I originally started looking this up, Martha Stewart came up, and I was like, no, I will not. You used
I
Martha
did.
Stewart last week. I know. And I think it's because it disappeared quickly after I looked it up. So, anyway,
Okay, fair.
but so we're talking about wildflower lawns or meadows. So, it's an alternative to the turf or grass lawn that most people in America have in their front or backyard. And go listen to our first episode this season on lawns and why they're evil. And it's mostly just because they take a lot of water. They require maintenance like CO2. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They don't require CO2. They require maintenance like lawnmowers and gas powered weed whackers or weed eaters and leaf blowers that cause a lot of emissions in the atmosphere, which is kind of one of their biggest detriments to ecological living. And
You can use electric versions, but I think
yeah,
most people don't have electric
well,
versions
they're hard
yet.
because yeah, the batteries don't. I don't know. There's a lot. They don't have quite have
Yeah.
the power yet. I think it's just
Oh,
easier
right.
to
If they
use
have to
gas
be
powered.
plugged in, how are you gonna?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fair.
it's hard to use a plugged-in lawnmower.
Yeah.
But also don't they require pesticides and fertilizers and other things, and they're usually not native to your local area. So there's a lot of things wrong with lawns, and that's most of the evil rhetoric you get surrounding wildflower is mostly people being like lawns are bad, and then they're like, but wildflowers are great. So
Right.
um,
Nobody's going to argue.
yeah, we're all like, yeah, we know lawns are bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get
Well,
it.
hopefully nobody's like, wildflowers cause
Cancer. Yeah,
chemicals to, yeah.
I didn't find
Anyway,
any of that. So
thank God.
I will say I didn't find a, okay, one possible detriment to wildflowers, and I'll get to that. So let's start with the
Okay.
eco-friendly claims that big wildflower. There isn't a big wildflower. It's, like nature preserves, like you were saying, you go to your local neighborhood nature preserve or even your nursery and they're like, wildflowers are great. And you're like, yes, they are. And everyone's like, yeah. So the biggest one they start with is that it's less water usage. You don't have to water native plants usually. That's the big benefit. If you're
What?
planting local native wildflowers, they should grow on their own. Now, that's
I
not,
mean, yeah.
they do take some time to establish.
Right.
So,
That's what I was going to say.
and if you're going through like a drought that is kind of unprecedented, which is what we've had in Texas the past few years, we had 90 days of over 110-degree temperatures.
Oh
That
my God.
anything requires water in that environment.
Yeah.
Um, although technically Texas wildflowers will come back seasonally, whether there's a drought or not. It's not going to kill them off. They're just not going to look great during the summer. So there's that.
Right.
Um, also, again, less CO2 emissions because you're not mowing or maintaining them, right? Um, ideally, you don't want to mow your wildflower lawn because you want it to grow. Otherwise, you'll just be cutting the flowers off. So,
Right.
uh,
And have like ugly sticks.
yeah. Now, one of the greatest claims they make is that they lead to greater biodiversity. So there's a variety of plants rather than just one type of lawn turf, right? It's not Kentucky bluegrass for acres and acres. It's a variety of plants. So that's clearly more biodiversity, but also increases other plants, encourages other plants to take seed there. More bugs show up, which leads to more birds, which means more mammals that eat the bugs and the birds. So it just kind of creates an ecosystem, which is very pleasant and good for the environment. It ends up also wildflowers attract pollinators, so it's good for the bees.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, we want to save the bees.
Yes.
But another way,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say it is kind of amazing how like one seemingly tiny drop in the bucket does make a huge
Yeah.
impact. Like I'm thinking of like reintroducing beavers. I don't remember which
Yes.
national park it was, but maybe it was Yellowstone. It might have been Yellowstone, but basically they reintroduced beavers where they had gone extinct, not extinct, but
Yeah.
been
Been
driven out of the
moved.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it like totally like all the
Yes.
marshes came back.
Creates a
Um
wetland, foxes,
yes.
bears,
Yeah, like
deer, everything. Yeah. Fish.
yes.
Fish that was almost extinct.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the things.
Yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
so there's some interesting science behind that with wildflower lawns too.
Oh, cool.
Another reason it's good for other creatures is because you don't have to use fertilizers and pesticides. So you're not poisoning, well, groundwater, but also you're not poisoning local bugs, flora and fauna. So that encourages more biodiversity as well. Again, they're easier to care for, less mowing, fewer pesticides, don't need to fertilize. They self fertilize. It's an ecosystem that is native to your area. It already does what it's supposed to do, so it'll just do it. And then it's just prettier. You have colors and flowers and variety. It is also seasonal, so your lawn is the same green pretty much if you water it and care for it and mow it year round. It's the same color. But the flowers will change throughout the seasons. So you'll have, it's spice of life. It's pretty cool.
Especially if you I did so much research and use a lot of resources to figure out
Yeah.
like what's going to flower when.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of plan it out at least a little bit, then you're going to have flowers throughout the entire,
All
like
the
from
year.
spring to
Yeah.
fall. And there are some things in the winter. I haven't gotten there yet, but
Yeah.
maybe
I
eventually.
mean, yeah, you'll have some, it's pretty cool how you can do that. Have you ever heard of a flower clock?
No.
There was a scientist who did it, and I mean, it was kind of all the rage, I think, in English gardens in the
Oh,
19th
okay.
century, I think, or 18th century. But it wasn't an exact clock, but it was different flowers would bloom at different times of the day. And so you'd have
Oh,
like the morning
interesting.
glories and and it
Oh,
was just it's a cool idea. But you can
that's
kind of
really
do
cool.
that seasonally with your wildflowers. You can have
Yeah,
an
man, those
orange.
English,
Yeah. Well,
those
they get a
folks
lot
know
of
what they're
rain.
doing.
Yeah.
Well, that
So,
too, yeah. But they also
but
really love gardens.
they do.
They're
Yeah,
really
they
good at
do.
them.
They kind of started the whole. I mean, we can kind of blame them for the American lawn
Well, true.
colonialism.
Well, yeah, France and England. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh
Europeans.
well.
Yeah. But yeah, so you know, again, the imagery that you see on Instagram for this is just wildflowers. It's just pretty fields of flowers. So, okay, they make these claims. Is there science behind this? We're not going to go too deep in the science, but one of my sources, um, the Science Alert article was based on a University of Cambridge study. And according to this article, the colorful chaos of a wildflower meadow is a much greener alternative to a perfectly manicured patch of grass. Word for word, that's what they said. So, to
Okay.
prove this, a group at King's College in Cambridge stopped mowing half of their back lawn in 2019 and planted that half with a wildflower meadow mix, local plants.
Okay.
So, per the article, 2 years later, they had these results: 3.6 times as many plants, spiders, and bugs as nearby turf lawns.
Whoa.
hmm 25 times higher biomass of invertebrates. So that's, slugs
Worms?
and, well, invertebrates like bugs, slugs. I mean, they're
Okay.
including all of the creepy crawlies in that,
Okay.
which, yeah, 2 times as many species that would need conservation. So it attracted endangered species back.
Whoa.
4 times as many declining plant species. Again, they're just back and thriving. And then they got bats. They now have bats to eat the bugs, which is cool.
What?
Yeah. So
That's
on top,
amazing.
yeah, they planted 33 species of plants, and now 51 more have just sprouted up naturally.
What?
Yeah, it attracted other
That's
plants. Well,
amazing.
you got to think
Probably because of the
because
birds and
the
the
birds and the bugs bring seeds and hang
wow.
out and plant other things.
That's
They
crazy.
also they don't need to mow, fertilize, water, or spray the plants with pesticides at all. So no maintenance, basically. They estimate they save about 1.36 tons of carbon emissions per hectare per year because they're not mowing or fertilizing.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's as much as a flight from New York to London, basically.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Also,
And
the
how big was these spaces?
you know what? I didn't catch how big the space they did was, but that was
Okay.
saying per hectare.
Right,
So
right, right.
I wasn't
What
sure
the
how many
hell's that?
hectares. I always forget what a hectare is like. It's smaller than an acre. Um,
Okay.
I need to
I
look
was
that
gonna
up.
say an acre would be pretty big, but yeah.
Let
But
me
if it's
look up.
smaller than an acre, that's actually really impressive. That's
Let me
insane.
see.
That's
How
crazy.
big is a hectare?
Because if it's like, wow, that's
Well, maybe hectares. Okay. It's 107,639.104 square feet. So it is bigger than an acre.
oh god, that's a lot of numbers.
Let me see. So, okay. An acre is about a little less than half of a hectare. So,
Okay, so it's like double an acre. Like
yeah, a little more than double.
okay,
So a hectare is 2 acres. Okay.
okay.
I had completely reversed them.
That's
Do
still
not
not.
listen to me. That's not a
No,
lot.
no, that's. It's not that big.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah. Now, another thing they found was that the meadow reflects more sunlight, which could help keep the city landscape cooler.
Hmm. I've heard that on
Yeah.
a lot of sources.
Yeah. So I don't know how they, I mean, they didn't have precise measurements on that, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, it does create a cooling effect. Even grass does. You notice that the difference between standing on asphalt and
Yeah.
standing on grass is substantial. So
Right. Yeah.
anyway, so that's pretty freaking great.
That's really amazing.
Again, this was England, so they get a lot of rain. I mean, they're
Uh-huh.
known for their rain and they're known for their flowers. So your results may vary. Um,
Right.
Again, I'm from New Mexico, so wildflowers in New Mexico are a little bit different.
Yeah.
But if you're growing a green lawn in a place where you get rain, this is something to consider.
Yes. That's really cool. I remember reading this article. I think it was this guy in the Washington Post, and he's like, This isn't scientific. I'm not doing any sort of like real
Measurement
research
or,
into
yeah,
this." But he was just looking at counting the number of bugs on one of his native trees versus his Japanese maple.
yeah,
And there were like 5 times as many
yeah.
bugs on his native
They're
tree. And
local
he
to
was
the
just like,
area. Yeah,
what? Like that? I don't know why that's so mind blowing.
yeah.
It
I
shouldn't
mean,
be.
it's just something that we don't think about, you know?
Mm hmm.
We're like, plant's a plant, right? But
Yes.
bugs have their diets that they like.
Yep.
And it's been thousands of years that they've been living in this environment. So
Mm hmm.
they're pretty specified. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, I think this is a good, good place to take a break because what I want to get into next is this something that a normal person can do? So,
Ooh, that's a big one.
yeah, there's some consideration. So let's take a quick break and then I'll dig into that.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All
So,
right.
we're
I
back.
don't know why I thumbs up.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're on video now, so
Yeah, okay.
is this something a normal person could do or afford? That's one of our big questions here at Greening Up My Act. We want to know, like, sounds great. Can you do it at home? If you have a
Mm-hmm.
lawn. According to the family handy, well, I'll get into why it not necessarily if you have a lawn, but if you have a lawn. According to the family handyman, there are a couple things that could hold you back from turning your turf lawn into a wildflower meadow. Number one, how's it going to look? Right? You got to think about aesthetics. Your homeowners association might not like the way your lawn looks like a bunch of weeds. So that's something if you are in a place where you have a homeowners association that wants you to have a turf lawn, it might take some convincing that it's not just going to look like an overgrown, you might have to map it out and make some plans and have a landscape architect come and help you with it. So that's pricey to consider.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, what choice in flowers do you have? So you can let your local weeds take over, which is what I do personally, but that means you don't have much say in the look you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You probably will have to intentionally plant the flowers you want to see and water them until they're established, which takes some effort. It's not just like, all right, here come the wildflowers. If you want certain wildflowers, like you have to plant them. They're not
Mm-hmm.
just going to show up on their own. So if you want
And buy them.
and buy them, yes. The other thing is invasive species. So if you just let your wildflower meadow run wild, invasive species are probably going to come over because they can. They have the opportunity to, if you're not weeding
Yes.
and tending to them. So the family handyman recommended getting rid of as many of those invasive species as you can before you plant your wildflowers. But again, your neighbors' lawns, the birds are going to bring them. You're going to get invasive species too. And as we said
Yeah.
last week, not all invasive species are bad, but they might creep out or crunch out the wildflowers that you want. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm struggling with because my neighbor um had she it's actually really cool. Like she basically she has no lawn. She has probably 1 or 2 acres, and she just basically is letting it go wild. And it's a lot of trees. I mean, it's been established for a long time, but it's just woods basically. And then you go like cut, and then there's lawn
Yeah.
where my previous owners of this house created it, and we've been maintaining it. And I'm like, well, what if I just cut out like some kind of pretty curvy section of this against the woods and just turn that into, just let the grass grow, the weeds grow, whatever. I know for a fact, because I know a bunch of the stuff in her woods seems invasive.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert by any means, but I just feel like some of it's so intense. It comes over the fence and I'm having to like fight off these like horrible thorny things. And
Yeah.
um yeah, so I know that would happen, and I'm
Yeah.
like, ugh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's always, you could always mow it down again if it
Yeah.
doesn't work,
I mean,
but
yeah, just weed whack it, right? Like if you have to.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you don't have like a strong fence delineating between you and your neighbors, I mean, that's the thing about plants. Like we try to control them. They do what they want.
Right.
They go where they can. So,
Yeah, in this section there's no fence, so
yeah.
they would just do whatever the hell they felt like,
Yeah.
which could be okay,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Depending,
And
I
I saw
mean,
something on one of these guys that I think we both follow on Instagram.
I
I
haven't
can't remember
either.
his prairie. Oh, you do?
Yeah, I bring him up
The guy
later.
about the prairie lawn and or
Yeah.
prairie, yeah,
Yeah,
prairie
yeah.
grass. I remember his name, but
The
yeah,
Native Habitat Project.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great.
He had a video about like, if you even let your nature preserve just go wild, that invasives will probably take
Yeah.
over
Yep.
because they're just everywhere now.
Yeah,
So
that's
I don't
the
know.
reason they're
It's kind of
invasive.
crazy.
They take
Yeah.
advantage. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just be aware of that. Yeah. I mean, but
But I don't know how to spot an invasive. That's my
I
problem.
know I have a mimosa tree in my backyard, which is like the pride of my yard in the springtime, but somebody told me mimosas are not native to Texas, and I was like, but it's so pretty.
Is it invasive?
Yeah, apparently. They're not I mean, oh, and again, we should talk about established exotics, right?
Right.
Versus invasive. So invasive, I guess the biggest difference is that it will take over and crowd out native species.
Yeah.
Whereas an established exotic will take advantage of the soil where it can, but not necessarily like ruin it for other
Kill off
species.
other,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like what's the lanternfly in New York that's invasive? It's
Yes, it's
like
all over here too.
yeah, it kills native plants. That's an invasive species. Whereas
Ugh.
clover isn't really crowding out, you know, clover is welcome. It's an established exotic.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
not like changing the
yeah,
ecosystem.
yeah.
Yeah.
So um now another question you have to ask yourself is can your yard support wildflowers? So while it may seem, wildflower meadows are like they're natural, but they usually need full sun and good drainage. And not every yard has that. So you also might have to amend your soil if the pH isn't right for local plants, because if it's been turf grass forever or whatever else you've had planted, it might not just naturally be great soil. So you might have to do a little research, and find out. Another issue is getting rid of your turf lawn. So you stop watering it, but you have to remove the old turf before the wildflowers can really take root. I mean, you can plant wildflowers among your lawn, like you were saying you could do with clover, but if you really want it to be like a full natural meadow, you got to get rid of turf lawn. It's just to get rid of the sod. So it can take 6 to 8 weeks to kill grass by covering it with black plastic, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Or, my friends did, they cover it with cardboard and mulch, but that still takes like a lot of time.
Yeah.
You so again, you can plant a meadow on top of your grass just by spreading seed and not mowing. It's possible, but it depends on the results you want. If you've got to please an HOA and make it look pretty, you might have to do more research and planning. So just that's something you have to look about it. The other thing is which plants are going to grow. So if you pick annual flowers, you'll have to re-sow every year and they're going to need more nutrients. right?
Screw annuals.
Yeah,
It's too much work.
it is. I hate annuals. Perennials will come back, but they have to be established and you have to know what you're doing, basically, like when to water them, when to expect them. Again, they're seasonal. So you might have some in the spring, some in the fall, some in the summer. Your lawn's going to look different throughout the year. You're going to have to do research about your local soil, local plants, and your climate to figure out what's best and when. So there's a lot of research. Now, the other question is, should you use seeds, just hand sow, as we were talking about last week, just throw the seeds out,
Mm-hmm.
or starters? Now, it ends up you've got basically three options if you want to do wildflowers. The first is seeds. This is the cheapest option. You just spread them out, water them, hope for the best. You got to make sure you're planting the right amount of seeds in the area because overcrowding can be a problem, depending on the species again. Like you said with
It's so
clover.
easy to get over ambitious when you're
Yeah,
planting seeds. You're
just
like, oh, that'll be
just
fine. Just
oh, just throw
1,800
a bunch.
seeds.
And the birds will eat some of them, but they will grow if you water them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Also, seeds provide you with the most variety, but they will take longer to get going, obviously.
Yeah.
Next up are plugs, which are basically starter sets. They're a bit more expensive. They probably will have already germinated. But they're a good supplement to a meadow if you already have one going, so you can plug stuff in that's like bald patches or dying or whatever.
Those are hard to find. I looked for those and I couldn't figure out where the hell to
Yeah.
buy them. So I just ended
Yeah.
up spending more money.
Yeah. I think if your local nursery has them, if they have a wildflower section, but again, wildflowers, it's like they're wildflowers, they just grow. So, I mean, you could probably wander out in your woods and pick them up. I keep wanting to do that. Like,
I thought about it.
there's some bulbs I want to just steal from my neighbor's lawn and just, you know, but yeah. Mats. Now, this was an interesting option. So, a mat is compressed mulch with the seeds infused into them, and
Hmm.
you just roll it out across the area and then cover it with soil. So, it's easier than plugs because it's not
Oh.
individual, it's a whole mat.
So you
So, it's
don't have
basically,
to. Well, you probably still have to remove the grass.
yeah. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
you could try to do it over the grass. I think
I doubt it would work.
seeding
Yeah.
makes more sense because it'll find space between the grass, but with a mat, the grass will probably grow through it. I don't know. I
Right. Right. Right.
um, but it's a little more surefire than seeds because it's basically like they're already in the mulch and you just it, with you're not like digging a hole and putting a seed and digging a hole and putting a
Mm-hmm.
seed or just spreading out wildflowers and hoping they grow. But again, you have to watch out for overcrowding. So, and that's
Okay.
probably the case with turf grass is that it crowds out the wildflower seeds. So,
Yeah.
okay, the other thing is wildflower turf, which is just like sod or lawn turf, but you just lay it out and water it. So it's basically already growing as I don't want to say a mat because we just said what mats are, but a sod. And
Wow.
this is definitely the most expensive option and the most
Yeah.
surefire. So, but you definitely have to get rid of your sod before doing that.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So I did more like a flower bed.
Yeah.
So I did individual
Yeah.
plants that I bought. But yeah,
Yeah.
for like a 20 by, I don't know, probably 20 by 10 flower bed, maybe a little bit bigger. It was like $400.
Still a
That's
lot.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But I can take those. The plan is to take those and divide them this
Yes,
year
because they
once they
will
start
propagate.
growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then move them around and yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, the other thing that they said to consider was waiting. So, you're going to have to wait. You're not going to see results right away. It can take trial and error to get plants established. Like you had problems with deer eating them,
Oh
etc.
god. It was like the drama of my spring.
Yeah. But it's not going to be like with a turf lawn, you plant it, you water it, and it's basically good to go. Not so with wildflowers. You got to wait. It'll be less
Yeah.
maintenance overall, but you are going to have to do the research, the planning, and the waiting.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of work up front and then the
Yeah.
payoff is later.
Yeah. Now, this is something I found very interesting. So, American Meadows, which is the other website I looked at, they said you don't have to commit to a full meadow lawn to get the benefits of wild. Just
Yep.
there we go, unplug my headphones. I was like, can't hear myself.
Well,
So, like you were saying, you can do a property line meadow, right? Just along the edges where
Mm-hmm.
you just plant wildflowers, where your property ends, like where your fence line would be. You can plant wildflowers in areas that are tough to mow, like on hills or uneven ground, which is what my roommate and I were talking about this before I came to record, and he said that's what his parents have done. They have just this slope that is like impossible to mow, so they just planted a wildflower. And he has this great. I'm going to try and get that video of his cat jumping through the wildflowers. It's so like
Oh my
idyllic and
gosh.
cute and like
That's
summer
amazing.
meadow. Yeah, it's just like this is why you want it. Or you could also do it near hardscaping or furniture in your yard. If because you don't want to mow around chairs, or you can just have wildflowers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or you can start with a mini meadow, which is basically what you did. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
out by your mailbox, in a small garden box, in a small area. So you don't have to commit to a full wildflower meadow to get the benefits, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. I think that's really smart because it
Yeah.
was a shocking amount of work
Yeah.
for my front flower beds. So
Yeah. Yeah.
be prepared.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
don't.
I've got a,
It's so easy to get in over your head with anything gardening related.
yeah. 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 Agreed. So
What
the
were you gonna
biggest,
say?
well, the people who lived here before me, I think, tried to spruce up the flower beds before selling it, and like nobody watered it, so it's just dead plants when I got here. But
Oh.
there was a bag of Texas wildflower seeds in the shed when I moved in that the possums had gotten into and eaten. But I was like, I was thinking of just throwing it out in my lawn and having a good
I mean,
field day.
hey,
Yeah.
give it a shot. Put it on the
Yeah.
edges.
Yeah. Well,
It could be dead now. I don't know how long seeds last,
yeah,
but
that was my thing. I think I'll just buy a new thing. But
yeah,
so that leads me to,
probably.
so from my understanding, the biggest issues with wildflower meadow lawns are the cost, like you were saying. Tearing up your
Mm-hmm.
existing lawn, not cheap. Could be hard to get rid of sod. Like you can't just put it in the compost bin,
Right.
or to buy the plastic or cardboard or whatever you need to kill off your existing lawn. That takes work, time, cost, money. But then
Mm-hmm.
you also have to buy the new plants or seeds, which,
Right.
like you said, can be costly. Now that's where Holland Wildflower Farm came in. So this was interesting. They said that wildflower seed is comparable to lawn grass seed on a per unit basis and can even be cheaper depending on the species. So basically, what they were saying is that when people are like, well, wildflower seed is so much more expensive than lawn seed, there's a couple things. Number one, that's comparing apples and oranges, because with lawn seed, you've got one single seed, it's all the same size. Wildflower seeds, variety of sizes. So
Mm-hmm.
fescue lawn seed is much bigger than wildflower seed. So a pound of fescue, say, has 227,000 seeds. A pound of wildflower seeds, depending on which ones you get, can have millions. And that just depends on the species.
Oh,
So
interesting.
you might be paying more for a pound of poppy seed, but it's going to give you millions of plants as opposed to 225,000, right?
And then you'll have all
So,
the opium you could ever
and then,
want.
shh, we're not that kind of podcast.
Poppies are my favorite
They're
flower. I
gorgeous.
love them.
They grow in northern New Mexico in the summer, just these orange poppies, and they're so
Oh my
beautiful.
gosh.
That's
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Now the other next issue that I saw was HOAs, right? If you live in a really regulated neighborhood with a homeowners association that wants you to mow your lawn, they might require you to have and maintain that lawn, and they might hit you with fines if it looks like you have a weed garden growing in your front yard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the National Wildlife Federation had that article that y'all should read it if you are interested in it. They had a few recommendations. Number one, start small, like in your backyard or a small gardening box, like you did. Number two, get permission to expand flower beds and reduce turf grass. So, like, just ask in advance. Number three, get your
Okay.
community in on it. They had models that are linked in the article, the National Wildlife Foundation, of what wildlife, like a wildflower meadow layout would look like in different areas. So you could
Oh,
take those
very cool.
plans with you to the meetings and like show people like this is what it's going to look like. Like give me some time, but this is the end. And talk to them about the benefits of wildflower gardens and things. And then their last Make sure people understand it's good for the whole neighborhood, right? But
Right.
then their last recommendation, which I loved, was like join your HOA and start changing things from within. And I was like, yeah, gorillas, like get in there, just take over the HOA and make everyone get a wildflower lawn.
I
But
love it. Make that be the new finable thing if you don't have
yeah,
a wildflower garden.
yeah, green up your HOA. So
I love it.
that's a great article. The next thing was time. Again, similar to cost, this is a resource not everyone has. Again, you got to get rid of your old grass. You got to do the research on what plants you want and what works, figure out if they're native, find where they're available. You got to buy them, you got to plant them. You got to do all that. You got to raise your children, go to your day job, and do your other hobbies.
Tell
It's
me, this was
America.
my life this
Yes,
spring. Yeah, tell me about it.
we love burnout. We just love it. But also the waiting. You got to wait. That's
Yeah.
time too. So,
Yeah. I was very impatient. I was like looking every morning, like, have you grown yet?
are you a poppy? Yeah. And the
Are you
last
my
issue,
poppy?
the last issue, which I found is not actually that much of an issue, was space.
Mm.
If you have any patch of grass whatsoever, you can turn it into a wildflower patch, basically, if you have the time and the money. Okay. You
Yep.
can also have a little wildflower garden in a pot on your fire escape.
Mm-hmm.
So space is not really the issue,
Yeah.
which was cool. I like that anyone can do it anywhere. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so does this Earth friendly message need to come back to Earth? Nah. I think this is actually a pretty great sustainable idea. Again, the
Yes.
Instagram presence on wildflower lawns isn't overrun by influencers because there's not really a product to sell. Like,
I also was thinking, and this
mhm.
is just a hypothesis. So
Okay,
lawns and yards,
yeah,
lawns specifically, grass,
yeah,
is like stereotypically the man's domain, right?
yes, it's true.
That's like the one thing. Okay, I'm being
I know
shitty,
this.
but
I know this is again. We're going into gender stereotypes from the
yes,
1950s.
yes, but a lot of it holds up, and I'm thinking mostly about these Reddit dudes. So
Yep,
like, that's like in a lot of people's minds, like the man's job is to like
right.
mow.
My father did my whole life, and my boyfriend mows my lawn.
Yeah, my husband did until we hired somebody.
Yeah, yeah,
I think I did it once and I was like, fuck this, it's hot.
yeah.
No.
My sister mows the
It,
lawn. She's like, check out my Fitbit score.
yeah, truly.
Yeah,
Um, but then flowers are the complete opposite. So I
they
wonder if
are.
it just hasn't been like overridden with opinionated guys.
Yeah,
And that's why it's such a pleasant space.
yeah.
This
Well, it
is
might be.
total hypothesis.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
yeah. I mean, it's not angry, right?
Yeah,
It's pretty. It's pretty flowers.
right.
That's an
It's just so funny.
interesting hypothesis. I think that might hold up. Again, you do have like the Native Habitat Project,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a man and an educator, and he's
Well, yeah, obviously not
yeah,
hashtag not all men, but
not all men. Well, but and he's also doing it kind of in a different way because he seems to be battling local people who are mowing. He's trying to kind of do it in a kind of guerrilla warfare way where he's native habitating his whole neighborhood, not just his own lawn.
yeah,
Whereas a
yeah.
lot of like the wildflower meadow stuff for your own lawn is just women being like, I tried to plant these things and they came up. Look at that, you know? So it's a
Mm-hmm.
different kind of mindset, which is interesting.
Yeah,
But it's not like none of it's preachy or scary. It's like very approachable. And it's really
I
just
love
like,
that.
do whatever you can, man. Did you throw seed out? Let's see what happens. It's just, yeah, it's peaceful.
I love it.
And at the end of the day, you get pretty flowers. So it's pretty neat.
That's so fantastic. I actually
Yeah.
prefer growing flowers over vegetables, which or like fruits or whatever. I was really surprised by that, but I just fell in love last
Yeah.
year. I'm like so
It's,
excited for spring.
it's easy. I don't know. Because I feel like it's lower stakes. Like you get flowers or you don't, basically. And like
Right.
with the food, it's like if you don't get the food, it's like okay, well, what's the point? Whereas with the flower, you're like okay, do what you can. Like
Yeah.
I have amaryllis, which are not those are Dutch Netherland plants. They're bulbs, but somebody gave me one for Christmas in 2016, and I grew it, and then I planted it in a pot, and then it had babies because the bulbs just probably, and so I divided that, and then I have 8 of them that I finally planted out in my front planter box, and they all died during the freeze 2 weeks ago. But they're growing back because they're bulbs, and you just water them and they come back. And they're not native,
Oh,
but and then I
nice.
get beautiful red flowers. Like usually they bloom in December and then again in like April.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
we'll see if they come back this year, though. We have had some pretty rough freezes. I only planted them in the ground 2 years ago, and I think they've bloomed twice since then. So we'll see.
Okay.
But I could bring them back in, and it's just like, cool, girls, you grow or don't.
Yes.
Like,
Or don't. You do you.
or you do you, babe. But I also
Just don't
have
get
just,
eaten by deer.
yeah, well, I don't have deer in my neighborhood. I'm in
Yeah,
an
well, fair.
urban. Um, but I also have just morning glories that just, when it rains, take over and they grow up my front fence there, not fence, but um, what's it called on
Trellis?
a patio? Not a trellis, even. Just the
Railing?
like my patio railing. Thank you, railing. Yes, they grow up my patio railing, and they're just these bright purple, beautiful things that just out of nowhere I'll just have like 1,000 of them, and then they die when it freezes, and then they come back because they're weeds, and it's great.
Wow.
They're
That's
gorgeous.
amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just low stakes. Like,
You're right.
yay, flowers. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about.
It's
I'm
like
not.
there's a really awesome payoff if it works, but if it
Yeah.
doesn't, it's like, okay.
Okay.
Try again.
Yeah. Yeah. Do something else. So, okay, let's get to my granola rating.
Yay.
So again, we explain every week. Tiffany came up with this delightful rating system for our green hooey meter. It's granola because we're hippies, and it's based on how crunchy or soggy it is. So a 1 rating is soggy, that's bad. 2 is mushy, that's less bad but still bad. Chewy is kind of middle of the pack, like chewy granola. It's like okay. Crunchy is like pretty good, and then 5 is break your tooth off, which is what we're aiming for. We want things to break your tooth off, and we've had a few of them, and they've been like home runs. Best thing, it's efficient. It does what it says it's going to do. It's actually sustainable and eco-friendly, and you can afford it and manage
Mm-hmm.
it. So
Mm-hmm.
this I'm giving a crunchy. Almost, so it's a
Nice.
4, almost a 4.5,
Okay.
because the greatest barriers are money and time, which we find to be
Yeah.
true in a lot of. They aren't nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
again, basically anyone can do it. You can go and buy a packet of wildflower seeds from Amazon for $2 or whatever, or at your local, you know, plant store for $2, plant it in a pot and grow a little wildflower garden.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
That Hudson, why can't I remember it? Hudson Valley River Company, whatever the hell it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
They have actually pretty affordable seeds,
yeah.
all things considered. But yeah,
It's cheaper than grass. I mean, at the end of the day, that's again if you're starting from scratch with grass. But I think
right.
you do have to like, obviously I've never taken care of my lawn properly, so I've never like reseeded, but I know my father always had to reseed and fertilize,
Right.
and
Yeah. I
so
see my
like
neighbor doing all that sort of thing. And I'm like,
yeah,
that must be nice to have time for that.
yeah. So the initial investment and eventually the time over the long haul, it's going to be less. And
Yeah.
again, you get all of those wonderful biodiversity, everything else. So that's great. So yeah, that I feel fluffy and sweet and cute, and I want to go roll in a
Yay.
wildflower lawn. But
Yay. I'm so
so yeah,
excited.
yeah. So that's wildflowers.
Yay. That is like beyond exciting. And
Peaceful
once
and
again,
wonderful. Yeah.
45 minutes.
It's just kind of
It's
our
just
jam.
what we
I
do,
told you. We're meant for
So
it.
funny.
Yeah. So, well, what's next week?
Next week, that's a shoot.
I know I
Good,
haven't looked. Let's
good
go
question.
look. Did you hate that when you have one window open and you're typing and then it ends up you're typing in another window and you
Yes.
accidentally send a chat message to someone that says drive? People are like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I was trying to
Oh
get into Google
gosh.
Drive." Okay, so I've got
All right. We kind of
we're
skipped around.
yeah. So I'm supposed to
So,
do hardscaping next week.
yeah. Maybe we'll just do 2 in a row. Is that fine?
Yeah, I don't care. This is fun.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so hardscaping.
All right, sweet.
Yeah, I'm excited because it's something I want to do in my lawn too.
I think that makes a lot of sense for your area.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening.
Yes.
As always, do us
If
a
you,
favor and go ahead. Yeah.
well, no, I was going to say if you have time, please leave a review.
Yes. Like
5
us.
stars would be awesome.
Yeah, but 1 star too. That gets a lot of buzz. We like buzz.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't have to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's actually
Yeah.
better if it's not. So,
Yeah. And hit us
please.
up on Instagram, Greening Up My Act, or on Facebook too, but nobody uses that anymore.
Yeah.
But
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next week.
Okay, bye.